Hi, Karen. Thanks for being with me today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Can you start by introducing yourself and just saying a little about kind of where you're standing, where you're coming from?
Sure. I am an academic. I'm a professor in the Department of Sociology and Social Anthropology at Dalhousie. I just recently resigned as the Associate Dean of Research in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, where I was responsible. One of my responsibilities was in managing graduate studies within the faculty.
Can you say a little about why you resigned?
I have come to see it as related to experiencing a moral injury
Mm.
from e- trying to set and achieve goals that were important to my faculty and important in academia in general, and not having the resources to do it or the bandwidth to do it. And some of that is related to the provincial budget. Some of it's related to other budgetary pressures and other kinds of constraints on doing research and teaching that are affecting like all universities in Canada right now. The pressure of knowing what needed to be done and not being able to do it got to be too much. And so did the inverse relationship between how hard I was working and how good things were getting within my faculty just got to be too much, which I think is what a lot of people are dealing with in their jobs right now.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that moral injury into the conversation.
Yeah, one of my colleagues said it because a lot of people were sort of trying to figure out, what had transpired that made me step away, and she hit the nail on the head. It was not about workload. I can do hard work. Not even stress. I can deal with stress. It's the moral part of it. Knowing what's right and not being able to do it was too much.
Yeah. I'm sorry that you went through that. You clearly deserve better.
Thank you. We all do.
Yeah. Which is why we're in this conversation right now.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk a little bit about the impact of the provincial budget on research in particular at universities?
Yeah, the most obvious thing that just recently happened with this with the budget that's still kind of being deliberated on is the cancellation of the Nova Scotia graduate scholarships. So these are actually not a very old scholarship. I think it's been maybe a decade, maybe a little bit more that they've been around. But it's a provincial scholarship program that funds graduate students at the master's and PhD levels. And Many other provinces in Canada have the same thing. I know that BC has it, Saskatchewan has it, Quebec, Ontario, New Brunswick has it as well. Those are just the ones that I know of. There might be more, but it's a pretty normal thing to have the provincial government putting some money towards graduate student education. They are merit based, so students with high GPAs and great research track records and proposals are the students who would win those awards, and we would use them to recruit students to our university programs, which was very helpful because we do have very high tuition. Um, Recently we've been dealing with we sort of can't play to our old strengths, which were like it's easy to find a house and housing is cheap and all this stuff. We don't really have that anymore. So being able to fund graduate students with these scholarships has been really important, and they're one of the more plentiful scholarships that we have access to. So we do have some federal ones. There are some internal ones at Dalhousie, but in our faculty anyway, we had a bunch of these scholarships to give out, and now we have zero.
And so, what is the practical impact of that?
Um, we won't be able to fund graduate students and bring them into our programs, and for most graduate students or applicants, this means they won't come.
Mm.
Graduate school is expensive, and it's also very demanding. So typically, you don't want to be working a lot of hours outside of your program to fund it. So it's a tall order to self-fund a graduate degree, especially like ours are course and thesis based, so they're a lot of work. So students won't come. We depend on graduate students for as teaching assistants in the undergraduate program. All of our undergraduate programs are our goal there is expansion, bigger classes, more enrollments. That is what Dalhousie needs to do to get its revenues up. And so we're working towards that at the same time as we're potentially losing part of the labor force that sustains those programs. And we also depend on graduate students as research assistants. They are paid to do that work on top of their scholarship. But it's typically not enough to recruit people into the program. And then at a higher level, we're just kind of like cutting off the pipeline of people who will be trained in critical thinking and research and like knowledge synthesis skills. So this focusing just on my faculty, the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, um, I think that our role in society is increasingly important. The thing that I keep thinking about is that so many of the problems that everyone I know um, is stressed about are social problems.
Mm.
So that things like climate change, that seems like maybe a technical problem or a hard science problem, but a lot of the solutions that we have already at our fingertips to, mitigate climate change or adapt to it, there are social barriers in the way of implementation and uptake. There are also social, contributors to climate change. Like part of what makes global warming happen is consumerism. We buy so much stuff, and we throw out so much stuff, and that's social. And that's just one example. Obviously, like geopolitics, wars, those are social matters. So it's very important that we be training people at higher and higher levels to understand society, understand how it works, understand how change happens, to understand history in order to give insights into where we're going, to be able to communicate. Like cross cultural communication is one of the things that we implicitly teach within our discipline. So you know the, I worry about what happens to society the more we divest from training in those disciplines. Importantly, it's not just arts and social sciences. Like the Nova Scotia graduate scholarships were across the whole university. So like every area of like advanced education is gonna suffer as a result of losing these scholarships.
So I'm hearing a bunch of tendrils of like webs and ways that things are connected. So those grad students who the school needs to attract are fulfilling all kinds of purposes, including helping to train undergraduates,
Yep.
teach undergraduates, but then also they're doing the kind of research um, that our society in Nova Scotia needs in order to plot a way forward, make decisions, and kind of understand who and how we are. Is
Yep.
that does that feel accurate? Can you talk a little bit more about the kinds of research that might be getting done at a university like Dalhousie, that then gets used somehow in public policy or by nonprofit organizations or governmental organizations? Can you just give us kind of a snapshot of that sort of thing?
Yeah, gosh, where to even start? So we have, let's see, there's community based and community partnered research. That's stuff that I'm involved in and that my students are involved in, where we partner with community organizations and identify a problem, like a research problem that is interesting to us as academics, but also is like of practical concern to the organization. We work together. We figure out a project that can kind of answer questions for both of us, and then students complete the work. And so they get training at the same time as they solve like a practical problem for an organization. It seems small, but if you add it all up, it does make a difference to that sector of community social organizations. We have people who are working in the Faculty of Arts and Social Science on issues of social exclusion, community safety, which is supposed to be a provincial, it's not one of the provincial priorities, but it is supposed to be a priority coming after the Mass Casualty Commission. We have students working on regional economic development and transit. We have people working on political polarization. Things that are we have research that is really rooted to specifically Nova Scotia problems. Students looking at Indigenous and settler fisher conflicts over the fisheries, all the way up to big questions about, say, political polarization across Canada. So stuff that's very important and that is headline grabbing and that really matters to people at the local and national and also international levels. And then if I look out beyond the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, Dal is doing all kinds of amazing research on oceans and AI and battery technology, climate change. We have so much exciting research happening, a lot of which depends on graduate students, and is affected in different ways and to different degrees by the loss of the Nova Scotia Graduate Scholarship, but also has already been kind of challenged by the way that the province has been approaching research, and their role in research. So Research Nova Scotia, for instance, has kind of tightened its funding. It funds research projects, it funds research infrastructure, and it used to be a great source for matching funding for federal programs that require researchers to find matching funds. But it has really tightened its focus around the Houston government's priorities. And those are, I don't know them off by heart, I should by now, but economic growth, healthcare, very specific things that exclude a lot of other things. And so
Tracking.
even in discovery science,
Yeah.
over in the hard sciences, they can have difficulties showing that they are working towards provincial priorities. Like if they're working in a lab on the very first stage of a discovery, it's really hard to say this is going to have an economic impact without it being a huge stretch. But that's the kind of stuff that's at risk of not advancing.
If this research doesn't happen in Nova Scotia, it'll happen somewhere else, won't it?
Some of it.
Yeah.
We're uniquely positioned, on oceans. We're not the only university that does oceans, but there are, there are some things that are just uniquely Dal, including that more community partnered research. No other university is going to partner with a little organization in the Annapolis Valley. Maybe they will, but it's kind of unlikely. So the local connection and the connection between research and Nova Scotia's priorities is I think at risk when we lose the graduate student funding, and also have the funding so tied to the provincial priorities, which, as we're seeing, they're not holistic. They don't understand the web that you're talking about, the interconnection between the arts and economic growth, or something like that.
Or the arts and healthcare, or the
Yeah.
arts and the environment, or the arts
Yeah.
in basically every aspect of society and life. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, if you look, say, 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road, let's narrow that time field a little. If you look 5 years down the road and say this budget goes through and this money is not available, and Dal doesn't get to attract these grad students to do this research, what what impact does that have on the way we live in Nova Scotia?
Um, the first thing that comes to mind is just that I don't know how Dalhousie can be a member of the U15, like of the biggest universities in Canada, if we don't have robust, well-funded graduate programs. And that might seem like it doesn't matter, but one of the things that makes Nova Scotia, vibrant and unique, and that does drive economic growth and prosperity in the province, is that we have these research institutions. We have DAL as a research institution, and we've got like a network of other universities, and there's lots of collaboration, among the faculty and students at those places. So I think there are some, I guess, economic multipliers that we will lose. There's also, kind of the intangibles of like Nova Scotia is kind of a small, it seems like a small town. The whole province has this vibe. But at the same time, we have these international connections that are driven through having a U15 university, and a strong, research culture here. I think the biggest thing I'm concerned about is just like a missed opportunity to get ahead of the social problems that are, like, it's not even hyperbolic to say that there are social problems and technological problems that are threatening the existence of humanity. AI, global warming, geopolitical conflict, like all of these things demand systems thinking and creative thinking. And I worry that if we just kind of like bury our heads and refuse to fund, discovery research and research in the arts and social sciences and those kinds of things, that we are going to be caught flat-footed in the future. And there are lots of things that I think probably need a redesign. And I wish that we were doing that as partners, partners with the provincial government, where there was really a dialogue about like, how do universities need to change to meet, the demands of all of the challenges that we're facing. And how can we do it in a way that's exciting and preserves like the mission of the university and the integrity of the disciplines in it. And that's just not happening. It's this kind of slash and burn approach with no plan for that I can see anyway for how to draw in different kinds of revenue to fill the gap, or to there's no like change management plan to ensure that this isn't just doesn't just result in like the closure of programs, which I'm afraid of.
Tim Houston and many MLAs, especially cabinet ministers, um, repeat this line: when we can do more, we we do more, and when we can do more, we will do more.
Mm-hmm.
So I know from my point of view in the arts, like when you axe programs like artists in the schools and artists in communities, I mean, those programs came to be after years of work inside and outside of government. And restarting them is not a switch that you flip, right? You have to rebuild these things.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that like in your world? Like, this change, if when it happens, will be instantaneous. The impact will be instantaneous, right? It's not like there's a tap that's slowly going to
No.
run out. It just gets turned off. So then if Dell loses its U15 status and Nova Scotia loses the benefit of, even if it is only, this government has what, 2.5 years left probably before we go to the polls again. And maybe there's a different government. And that government is like, oh gosh, we see the wisdom in funding research at Dalhousie University. So let's say in 2.5 years, suddenly that tap gets turned back on. It, is everything okay at that point? Do you just, okay, we're back?
No. Yeah, just like in your world, it would take so much time to rebuild, and I worry that we'd have lost capacity to do that. So no, it would take time. And like, I don't know if Dell, would, to me, from my perspective, uh, you have to have robust graduate programs to be a member of the U15.
Sure.
Maybe there's ways around that. I don't know. But even just looking at like the undeniable link between the Nova Scotia Graduate Scholarship and our graduate cohorts. If the cohorts shrink, um, we will have a reduction in research capacity, a reduction in teaching capacity, and we're not going to rebound quickly from that. And I worry that people are going to burn out. I think it's already happening. It's happening across sectors and workplaces. It's happening at Dal. Um, People are going to take a long time to rebound from that as well. Like if we're teaching the large classes and we don't have the teaching assistant support, especially in a context where it seems like our like teaching is harder now. We're trying to keep up with AI, figure out how do we teach in this new context. We're trying to uh, we have a more diverse student body. That's a good thing, but it does mean that we have increasing demands for accommodation, for learning accommodations, and that a lot of that work falls on faculty. So just as our jobs are getting more complex, it seems like part of some of the supports are being pulled out from under us. So I think it's a recipe for burnout and disengagement, and I think we would take a long time to recover from that.
Because people will leave.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe they'll leave, or maybe they'll just like quiet quit,
Right.
and just do less, and that's bad for workplace morale. Like I think it's already happening. I think it's happening at Dial. I think it's happening at other places. And uh, yeah, I really worry about what's coming like 5 years down the road if we don't correct course.
People who can self-finance
Mhm.
a graduate degree, who can afford it because they have access to some other money, generational wealth or whatever, will still pursue those degrees. And so there would be a pool of people who would do research, who would fill out those cohorts, right?
There won't be enough to replace the folks who are funded, and other provinces haven't axed their provincial funding. We've always struggled to kind of match the funding available at other universities, so I think it's just going to be more of the same. We're less competitive now with universities across the country, and students, who are making a partly financial decision would be wise to go where they get offered more money. So there will be some self-funded students, that is true, but it's not enough to compensate for the losses. And it's also, if we believe in access to education, it's also a problem if it depends on having generational wealth.
Yeah, it makes for fewer points of view at the table,
Yeah, for sure.
which is makes for weaker research overall, I would imagine.
Yeah, weaker research, weaker organization, weaker societies. Like if education, especially advanced like higher education and graduate work is even more difficult to access and even more like elite, then I think that further contributes to like a political polarization, anti-intellectualism, um, and and I understand where that comes from.
What do you most want Nova Scotians to understand about this, like about your world and this moment?
um, I think I want to push back on the idea that there's like useless graduate student research happening in universities. Like you always hear this like, oh, go take a course on basket weaving or write your thesis on basket weaving or whatever. And There is value in just learning the research skills. being able to sift through and organize large amounts of information and then come out the other side with like a narrative, a story, a finding, a summary, whatever. That is the skill we're teaching. It could be on basket weaving. It's probably not. But the topic, especially in the social sciences, is less important than the how, the learning how to think. And that stuff is very in demand. Like if there are so many, surveys of like Fortune 500 companies and stuff that shows that one of the top skills they're looking for is critical thinking and communications. And so, speaking just for the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, like that's the kind of stuff that we're teaching. And it is important. It has social value, it has economic value. It's not just people who are like, it's not at all people who are navel gazing and like, relying on the provincial government to fund that. That's not what we're up to. And if we broaden our view to like across the university, there's so much important like experimental science and innovation in AI, batteries, energy, oceans, all of these really important sectors. And students are doing that work. They're doing stuff on forestry. They're doing stuff on domestic violence. All the stuff that has occupied the Nova Scotian public mind for the last 5 years. People are looking into it at Dal. So the research that's happening, and particularly the stuff that graduate students are doing, is important. A lot of it's important in its own right, and all of it is important just in the skills that it's teaching. And it's where the world is going. The federal government is trying to invest more in graduate education, and we're just doing the opposite. So I want people to understand that this is important and that it matters to more than just academics, that it matters to the whole province.
I think probably I need to book a basket weaver to come on this this podcast and like
I
talk
know.
about basket weaving because it is the thing that people always point to. But like, have you looked at baskets? Like, have you
Right.
looked at the baskets being woven by like Mi'kmaq elders like Margaret Pelletier? I had an opportunity last fall to like hold some of her incredible baskets in my hand and look at them. Like those are complete systems, those are super intricate. And like try to do your laundry without a basket and let me know how far you get.
Right, exactly. Yes. And this is yeah, you got to combat the basket weaving slander
Put some
somehow.
respect on basket weaving. My gosh.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, no, I'm not dissing that either.
No, I know that you're not. I know that you're not.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about it so much lately because the Premier of Ontario also
Yeah.
characterized post-secondary arts education as basket weaving, and
Yeah.
it does seem to be this, sort of convenient um, dismissal.
Yeah.
And yet, basket weaving is very complex and very beautiful and very
Yes.
useful. It's all the things. It's like so many of these other things that we're talking about. Like that research network is complex and beautiful and so useful. And the arts and culture ecosystem is complex and beautiful and useful. And, woodland stewardship is complex and useful and beautiful. All the aspects of our way of life that are threatened with
Yeah.
this proposed provincial budget. Um, are beautiful and useful and complex.
Yes. And social. And I think that's from where I'm sitting in my faculty, like that's the part that I really worry about, because I know in my everyday life as a researcher, um, I get pulled into collaborations with natural scientists because they reach what should be the end of their inquiry and go, oh, how do we make sure that people take up this technology that we've created? Or how do we deal with conflicts over the resources that go into making this technology or whatever? And that's the kind of stuff that can completely stop an important development from happening. And so you do need people who understand society and possess the tools to do the inquiry, to come up with answers for how you solve social problems.
That's so fascinating. It's like there is no innovation without that social piece.
Correct. And like this is the federal government has realized this. The even like the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, which funds all of the kind of like, hard science research in Canada. Um, like they have been launching competitions that require you to have a social scientist on the team because there is a just an overriding recognition that everything has a social component. So if we're not training those people, it's not going to go away. We're not going to solve society one day. Like we are going to need those people forever. And even if we decide to fully embrace AI, somebody's going to need to feed it with ideas, or else it's just going to keep regurgitating its own slop. So, no matter what direction we go as a society, we're still going to be a society that needs people who understand how society works.
Karen, it's been an absolute pleasure to get to spend some time with you today. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Same. Thanks for the opportunity to just rant.
I don't consider it ranting when it's so cogent
Great.
and
Okay,
so
good.
vital. So good job, you.
Great. Thanks.